What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another review of old school Monday Night Raws. Today we are reviewing the April 26th, 1993 edition. And for this one, we are back in the Manhattan Center. And I don't know about you, but whenever we go to the Poughkeepsie Center, or the Poughkeepsie Arena area building, whatever it's called, I'm scared because usually we get a bad show. So seeing this place in the Manhattan Center makes me feel comfortable. Gives me hope for a decent show. Rob Bartlett is replaced tonight with Bobby Heenan, so that's even a plus there for the show already. Our first match is between my favorite wrestler and the one I hate the most, for this year at least, Damien Demento versus Mr. Perfect. Demento was losing his mind, talking to himself and pacing around ringside. Crowd sounds like they're chanting NXT at one point. Obviously they were not, but they were chanting something at Damien. Mr. Perfect though gets a knee lift and a snapmare, but that's still not enough. Demento goes for a splash, but Perfect gets the knees up and then gets the perfect plex for the win. I'm going to keep mentioning this until my face turns blue, but Vince McMahon on commentary does not come across as the person we've all heard these stories of over the years of micromanagement. Because, for example, the commentators today nail you with the tagline after tagline 30 times in an hour. But Vince has this tagline for Raw: uncut, uncooked, and uncensored, but they mess it up constantly and they only bring it up like once a show. At most, they bring it up twice, but they don't beat you over the head with it, is what I'm trying to say. Up next, though, Lex Luger comes out, and they do mention that Luger has a plate in his elbow after he got surgery on it, explaining why he has been knocking people out. He's out here to face off against Crush. I wonder what happened with Doink at WrestleMania. Actually, no, I don't. They do a test of strength for the first couple of minutes of the match. Crush shows his power by lifting Lex over his head and slamming him down. Luger goes to the outside for way longer than a 10 count, but because that's not the finish, the referee doesn't count him out. I understand when referees don't count or turn a blind eye here and there in a championship or main event match, but for matches that don't really matter, just do your job, and if the wrestlers can't think not to be DQ'd or counted out, that should be on them. But back to the match. Luger gets control by slamming Crush into the post on the outside. A couple of suplexes by Crush gives him some breathing room. A close pinfall after a power slam. Then Crush gets Luger's head in his palms for a submission, a head vice type of move. But then Crush sees Doink on the upper section of the building and lets go of Luger to pay attention to the clown. And then another Doink appears on the opposite side of the building, distracting Crush even more. So Luger then gets a shot to the distracted Crush and sends him outside. This time the referee does count to 10 and Lex Luger wins. So looks like the Doink and Crush storyline is still going on. We'll see what happens with Lex Luger because I think he has something with Bret Hart going into the King of the Ring. I think they're both in the tournament. If not, they're qualifying for it right now. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them. Speaking of, we get a King of the Ring promo, and then Vince tells us that qualifying matches will start next week. So like I said, yeah, Lex Luger and Bret Hart are probably going to be in it, but none are announced for Monday Night Raw. So it's going to be hard to keep up with who's in the tournament because not every match is going to be taking place on Raw. And if they do mention who qualifies, it's usually going to be on the King of the Ring update, those pay-per-view updates that they do on Raw sometimes. But I never watch them all the way through because I feel like that's just a lot of that's just some unnecessary stuff that they could just say on commentary or give us a quick package of, oh, look at this guy beating this guy to qualify. They don't need to make a whole 5 minute. Sometimes it's even longer than that. But they do like a whole thing with these pay-per-view updates. They did it for the Rumble, they did it for WrestleMania, and now they're doing it again for the King of the Ring. I just don't understand why they should just announce it on Raw. You're on the show, just tell us what's going on. Don't have a whole segment for it. But enough of that. We're gonna go on to our next match, which was a jobber match for the debuting Mr. Hughes. He wins with a devastating maneuver, as Vince calls it. But what it was a chokeslam, and Mr. Hughes fell down with him. So yeah, Mr. Hughes picks up his win on his debut on Raw. We got our first look at Billy and Bart Gunn, the Smoking Guns, in a vignette. Both are riding on some horses talking about coming to the WWF. I legit cannot wait for these guys to come into this lackluster tag team division that we have. Them versus the Steiner brothers. Can you imagine that? Book it. We get Shawn Michaels in the ring for an interview with Vince McMahon. Shawn says he's tired of coming to New York City, but it's only the second time we're seeing him on Raw since January. He insults some guys in the crowd, a gay joke, I believe, getting some real heel heat if there ever was any. But then the crowd themselves turn heel by chanting that Shawn is gay. I couldn't pay attention to anything Shawn was saying because the chants were so loud. Then they bring up his attack on Mr. Perfect, but Perfect comes out and tries to get in the ring, but some refs come out to stop him. He gets on the ring apron, but Shawn gets a cheap shot on him and runs off as Mr. Perfect chases him to the back. We get some footage from an episode of WWF Superstars. Like I said earlier, you could do it for this, why not do it for mostly everything else that happens on those shows? To explain to us what else is going on in the world of the WWF. So in this footage, we get Bam Bigelow getting his hands on Sensational Sherry, but Tatanka comes out for the save. Later in the same show, Tatanka was supposed to wrestle, but we see that Bigelow had took him out backstage. Bigelow then starts cutting off some of Tatanka's hair. So this might continue the Sherry and Luna storyline, and now both of them have a man in their corner because women obviously cannot handle their own business according to the show. Moving on, we get Typhoon in a jobber match. Quick and easy win with a splash for him there. Not gonna go too much into that. Bobby Heenan then goes to the audience and gets one of the guys in the crowd to help him to propose to his girlfriend. The crowd again turns heel and start chanting, "Just say no." But it looks like she said yes, and they live happily ever after. If you know for whatever reason if they got married and if they are still together to this day, please let me know. It's none of my business, I know that, but I gotta know for research purposes. But that's how the show ends, so let's get to the awards. For the best moment, I had the Shawn Michaels interview. The way he carried himself, didn't let the fans mess him up. Then Mr. Perfect coming out and Shawn getting a lick in before running away like a coward. Nice little segment for this era of the WWF. For the worst moment, I had Mr. Hughes getting a squash match. He's the least significant of all the people to have a match on this episode. At least we've seen Typhoon on Raw before. Why is Mr. Hughes debuting all of a sudden without any build up, without any anticipation? He just comes out. Oh look, this guy's having a match. I didn't understand that. And I don't have any other nominees for this award, so yeah, Mr. Perfect and Damien Demento are going to get the best match of the night. For the worst match, I had Typhoon versus a Jobber. While there wasn't anything to really complain about with what happened in the match, but I just had enough of them ending the show with Jobber matches. Makes no sense. Why not end it with Perfect and Demento? Like I said, it wasn't a great match either, but at least those are two names that we've seen before. It's not Typhoon versus a local competitor. You know what I mean? Moving on from that, we're going to go to the wackest performer. I'd like to give it to Damien Demento again, but he was in my best match, so I can't do that. I'll just give it to Crush for getting distracted in the middle of a match by a clown that was nowhere near him when he was about to win. Alright, now for the standout performer, this guy got me to give a best match award to Damien Demento. So of course I'm going to give that to Mr. Perfect. And he was also part of two segments and he was great on both of them as usual. So yeah, Mr. Perfect gets standout of the night. So for my overall grade for this show, I'll give it like a B minus. Not a great show, but there were some good little bits and pieces spread out to advance multiple storylines throughout the episode. We get some information on the King of the Ring tournament. Like I said, I don't really like those updates, but I can't really say they don't give us information on the upcoming pay-per-view. A little bit of everything on this episode, worth taking a look at if you got the time or binge watching Raws for whatever reason, if you have nothing better to do. So let's take a look at the tally for Raws. With this show, we now have 9 in the good, and we keep the bads at 5. Alright, so with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. I'll catch none of you next time because you know what? I'm done with this.